Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. This time we're going to be looking at how we can all stay informed in a world where AI can create almost anything. It's a lot to think about, so luckily, I'm not alone today.
I know, right? It really feels like we're in uncharted territory.
Absolutely. So to help us unpack all of this, we'll be diving into the work of John Rasmussen.
Now, John has an interesting perspective, wouldn't you say?
Oh, for sure. He has a ton of experience with AI, going all the way back to the 90s.
Back when it was still kind of, science fiction for most people.
Exactly. He actually worked with pioneers like Ray Kurzweil.
And even consulted for Google.
So he's really seen this technology develop firsthand.
From the very beginning.
And here's the thing. John actually remembers life before the internet.
I know, it's wild, right? Hard to imagine these days.
Totally. But John has pointed out this trend that's honestly kind of worrying.
Okay, I'm curious. What's that?
Well, he says that while technology has been incredible in so many ways, it's also made it way too easy to spread misinformation.
That's a good point. It's not like people weren't making things up 50 years ago or anything.
Right. But the internet and social media, they've really kind of changed the game,
Oh, absolutely. It's like they've created these echo chambers.
where false information can just spread like wildfire.
Exactly. And it's really hard to break out of that.
It really is. It's almost like we're constantly surrounded by information that just confirms what we already believe.
Yeah, which makes it even harder to figure out what's actually true.
So true. It's like that analogy John uses. Have you heard that one?
Refresh my memory.
Okay, so he compares it to trying to walk east to New York, but you're accidentally heading west the whole time.
Oh, right.
You might be totally convinced you're on the right path, but if you don't ever check your bearings, you're going to end up very far from where you want to be.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. I think that's confirmation bias in action, right? We tend to favor information that already lines up with what we think.
It's so easy to get stuck in our own little bubbles. So how do we break out of these echo chambers then and develop what John calls real intelligence?
Yeah, what is that?
That's the million-dollar question. What does real intelligence even mean?
Well, I think for John, it's about being able to cut through all the noise and make sound judgments, especially now with all the information overload we face.
So it's not just about knowing a bunch of stuff.
Right. It's more about knowing how to think critically about the information you're getting. It involves doing some research, cross-referencing sources, and even thinking about your own personal experiences.
Okay, so it's like you're taking an active role in evaluating the information you come across.
Yes, exactly. And asking those important questions like, where did this information come from, and can I actually trust this source?
It's almost like being a detective, right? You have to look for clues to figure out what's really going on.
I love that. A detective of information.
Another thing John talks about is how humans are naturally drawn to complexity.
Oh, for sure. Like, we love to explore and create new things. It's in our nature.
Exactly. But now, with AI being able to generate content so easily, how does that impact all of this?
Well, have you heard of deepfakes?
Yeah, those are a bit freaky.
Right. I mean, they're videos that have been manipulated with AI to look incredibly real.
And it's getting harder and harder to tell what's real and what's not.
Exactly. And that's where this whole idea of real intelligence becomes even more crucial. We need to be able to navigate this increasingly complex world of information.
So it's almost like we need to be more mindful than ever before, more careful about what we create, what we share, and what we believe.
It's all connected. You can't really separate those things anymore.
And that brings us to another one of John's concepts. It's this idea of creating a sacred space of accurate information around ourselves.
Oh, that's a good one. I'm really curious about what he means by that.
Yeah, me too. Like, what does that actually look like in practice?
So I think it's about being really intentional with your information diet, just like you wouldn't just eat anything without knowing what it is or where it came from, right?
You shouldn't just consume information blindly. Makes sense.
You have to be careful about your sources and really cultivate a space where you can trust the information you're taking in.
So it's about being more conscious of how information impacts us,
Yeah.
both positively and negatively.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that the information we consume shapes our understanding of the world, it influences our decisions, and ultimately, it impacts the kind of future we create.
Wow, that's a really powerful way to put it.
It really is.
Now, I'm curious about John's own experience with all of this. He has access to a lot of insider information from his work,
Yeah, I can imagine.
but he talks about how sharing it publicly often leads to pushback and arguments.
Oh, I bet.
It's almost like some people just aren't ready to hear certain things, even if they're true.
It's true. And John talks about this idea that you can't force people to accept answers to questions they haven't even asked yet.
Makes sense. So maybe it's more about planting those seeds, sparking that curiosity.
Yeah, encouraging people to ask those questions
That
themselves.
makes sense.
And it takes patience, right? You can't expect people to change their minds overnight.
This is all so fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's shift gears for a second and think about our listeners.
Okay, I'm ready.
What are some key takeaways from all of this that they can actually use in their own lives?
Well, John is really big on this idea of being impeccable with your information.
Okay, what does that mean exactly?
It means taking the time to really research what you're reading and hearing, verifying your sources, and not being afraid to consult experts in the field.
So don't just take everything at face value.
Exactly. It's about being an active participant in your own information journey, not just a passive consumer of whatever comes your way.
It's about making conscious choices.
Yes. And John would say that those choices should align with the kind of world you want to live in.
That's a big one.
It is. So ask yourself, what kind of information ecosystem am I contributing to by what I read, share, and believe? And do my choices actually support that vision?
Whoa, okay. That's a powerful question to think about.
It is, right. It really makes you consider the impact of even those seemingly small choices, like what you click on and what you share.
Wow, this has been so insightful already.
I agree.
And honestly, we've only just scratched the surface of all of this.
Oh, for sure. There's so much more to explore.
We'll be back in a moment to delve even deeper into John's ideas about real intelligence, what it means for all of us as we try to navigate this crazy, complex information landscape.
It's interesting, isn't it, how John talks about this sacred space idea?
Oh yeah, how so?
Like it's almost a spiritual practice, being so mindful about the information you let into your life.
You know, it does sound kind of like mindfulness, right?
Yeah.
Like just as you might approach meditation with intention, we can be intentional about the information we consume,
I like that.
being mindful about what we're hoping to learn, you know. What impact do we want it to have?
Exactly. And it's not just about dodging all the bad information either.
Oh, for sure.
It's also about actively looking for sources that nourish our minds, that help us grow.
Yeah, yeah. Like, give us something to think about. So it's not just about passively scrolling through our feeds.
No, not at all. We have to be more proactive.
Right, right.
It's about being curious and asking questions and being willing to maybe challenge our own assumptions.
Yeah. You know, it can be so uncomfortable to deal with information that contradicts what we believe.
It can be, but it's often in those moments of discomfort, right?
Yeah,
That real change can happen.
like you're being pushed outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah, exactly. You have to grapple with those new ideas.
And that's how you can start to expand your understanding of yourself and the world.
You got it.
So that's where real intelligence comes in.
Right.
It's not just about memorizing facts and figures.
No, no, no. It's way more than that.
It's about knowing how to think critically, bring together different viewpoints, and then ultimately come to your own informed conclusions.
You nailed it. It's a process.
It's a journey.
Yeah, of learning and questioning and evolving, always evolving.
You know, John shares a really interesting story about this. He talks about how sometimes, even when he knows he has valuable information to share, people just aren't open to hearing it.
Oh, I bet.
He compares it to trying to tell someone that they're walking in the wrong direction.
Oh, right.
They think they're headed east to New York, but they're actually going west.
Ah, that's such a good way to think about it. It shows how cognitive biases can really blind us to the truth, even when there's evidence right in front of us.
Okay, so how do we handle those kinds of situations then?
Oh, yeah, that's the tough one, isn't it?
Like when you see someone going down that rabbit hole of misinformation, but they're so resistant to hearing anything else.
It's really hard. But I think it has to start with compassion,
Yeah.
remembering that everyone's on their own journey with this.
Their own information journey.
Yeah. And their information choices, they're often reflecting their own personal experiences and perspectives.
That's a good point. So instead of trying to force our own views on them,
Right.
maybe it's more about encouraging them to ask themselves those tough questions.
Yes. Gently nudge them toward being more curious, being more open to different viewpoints.
And maybe it's important to do that with some humility, right?
Oh, for sure.
Like none of us have all the answers. You know, we're all learning as we go.
Exactly.
And sometimes maybe the best thing we could do is just listen. Just be there for them as they work through it all.
I agree. And John also talks about how unsolicited advice,
Yeah.
it can often be perceived as criticism.
Even when you have good intentions.
Right. It might not be well received if someone just isn't ready to hear it yet.
So maybe it's more about Leading by example, showing them through our own actions how to be critical and open-minded about information.
Yes, exactly. Like if we can model those behaviors,
Right.
we can hopefully inspire others to do the same.
I like that. And maybe that's the most powerful way to actually help people develop this real intelligence,
What do you mean?
empowering them to be more discerning with the information they take in.
Yes. And that means creating a culture of curiosity and critical thinking.
An open dialogue.
Exactly.
Okay, so where do we start?
I think it all comes back to each of us, right? Taking responsibility for our own information choices.
Creating that sacred space.
Yeah, being mindful about what we consume and what we share.
It's a lifelong process.
It is, but it's so important because ultimately, the information we choose, it shapes the quality of our lives.
That's so true. You know, this whole conversation keeps bringing me back to one key question.
Oh yeah, what's that?
How do AI and this idea of real intelligence actually intersect?
That's the big one, isn't it? Because on one hand, you have the potential of AI to be this incredible tool for learning and growth.
Yeah, like imagine having an AI assistant that helps you research topics and fact-check information.
Right. And maybe even helps you identify your own biases. That would be amazing.
That would be revolutionary. But then on the other hand, you have the potential for AI to be used to create even more sophisticated misinformation, making it even harder to separate fact from fiction.
It's like this constant race, isn't it?
Between good and bad.
Yeah. Between using AI for good and using it for more manipulative purposes.
Yeah.
And I guess the outcome really depends on the choices we make.
Exactly. And that's why this focus on developing real intelligence is more critical than ever, right?
It is. We have to equip ourselves with those critical thinking skills and ethical awareness.
To help us navigate this landscape.
And it's not just about recognizing AI's potential, but also being aware of its limitations, and its potential downsides.
It's about using technology wisely.
So it empowers us instead of manipulating us.
So much to think about. So let's think about our listeners for a second.
Yeah.
What are some things they can do to start strengthening their own real intelligence muscles?
Well, we've talked about being careful about information and getting different viewpoints.
Yeah.
Well, John really stresses building a network of trusted sources.
Okay.
Like experts in their field or journalists you respect or even friends and family members who are really thoughtful.
It's like creating your own board of advisors.
Exactly. People you can turn to for guidance and different perspectives.
How do you go about finding those people?
Well, it's not just about finding them, but it's also about learning to evaluate them critically.
Ah, okay.
It's like, asking yourself, what are their biases?
Yeah.
What are their motivations? What makes them a credible source?
Because it's so easy to just assume something is true because it comes from someone we admire.
Oh, absolutely. But we have to dig deeper.
It's like that detective work again.
Right. That's where critical thinking comes in. Question everything, even the stuff we think we know.
It's recognizing that we all have those biases, right?
We do.
And the only way to truly learn is to be open to those different viewpoints.
And to be humble about it. Like,
Right.
We don't have all the answers, We're all works in progress.
This has been so eye-opening.
It really has.
It's made me realize that developing real intelligence, it's not just about filling your head with information.
Right.
It's about developing a way of thinking, a way of looking at the world.
That's curious and critical and compassionate.
Well said. And it's a journey we're all on together, right?
It is.
So why is open and respectful dialogue so important in this?
Because sometimes it's those conversations that really challenge us. That's where the real learning takes place.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, that's what real intelligence is all about, right?
What do you mean?
Engaging with the world in a way that's curious and critical, but also kind.
Beautifully said.
This has been such a great conversation.
It really has.
So before we wrap up, one final question.
Okay. Shoot.
Okay, so if AI keeps getting more sophisticated, how are we going to know what to believe? Like, what criteria will we use to tell what's true and what's not?
That's the million-dollar question. And I think the answer is going to shape the future of how we get our information, and what kind of world we build. It's a big
Like a call to action almost.
Right.
A call to be more aware, more discerning, more careful about how we engage with all this information.
It is. And it's one we can't afford to ignore.
Well, this has been such a thought-provoking discussion.
I agree.
But we're not quite done yet.
Oh, there's more.
We'll be right back to share a few final thoughts and some resources to help you explore all of this even further. So we've talked a lot about AI and misinformation and all of that.
Yeah, a lot to unpack.
But if I could ask John Rasmussen just one question,
Oh, okay. What would it be?
it would be this. What gives him hope? You know?
Hope.
Yeah. Like, after seeing all of this firsthand,
Because it can feel kind of overwhelming, can't it?
it can. He's seen how technology can be used in all these, like, negative ways to spread misinformation.
Yeah, yeah.
He even talks about facing resistance when he tries to share what he knows, but he doesn't seem defeated by it all. You know what I mean?
I get it. So, what do you think it is about his perspective that stands out to you?
Well, he still believes in the power of information.
Mm.
He still believes in the importance of critical thinking. And that's really inspiring, don't you think?
I think so too. I think his hope maybe comes from that deep understanding of human nature.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Like he believes that we're naturally curious, always seeking to learn and grow. And I think it's that drive, that thirst for knowledge, that's what's going to lead us to a better future.
So it's not just about fighting against all the negative stuff.
No, not at all.
It's about fostering the good stuff, too.
Exactly. It's about encouraging that curiosity, that love of learning, being
Yeah.
open to new ideas.
And that's something we can all do, right?
Yes, it's not about being an expert. It's about having the right mindset.
It's almost like a muscle, you know? You have to keep working it out to make it stronger. The more you practice critical thinking, the better you get at it.
I love that analogy. So true.
And the better you get at it, the less susceptible you are to all of the manipulation and misinformation out there.
It's about being in control.
Taking control of your own information journey.
That's it.
So, okay, what are some things our listeners can do?
To get started.
Yeah, to start strengthening those real intelligence muscles. We've talked about being careful with information, making sure you're getting different perspectives.
Well, Jaron talks a lot about building a network of trusted sources.
Oh, like mentors.
Yeah, kinda. But they can be anyone, really. Experts in their field, maybe journalists you trust, even friends and family who are, thoughtful and discerning.
So it's like you're creating your own personal board of advisors.
Perfect. People you can go to for advice and to get different perspectives. But it's not just about finding these people, right?
No, what else?
It's also about learning to evaluate them critically.
Ah, okay. So it's like, okay, what are their biases?
Yeah. What are their motivations? Why should I believe what they're telling me?
Because it's so easy to just believe someone because you admire them.
Oh, it's so true. But we have to look a little deeper.
There's that detective work again.
It all comes back to that, doesn't it? Question everything, even things you think you already know.
Because we're all susceptible to those biases.
Is that right?
We all have them.
We do.
And the only way to really learn and grow is to be open to other perspectives.
And to admit that you might be wrong sometimes, that's a big one,
Oh, yeah, that's a tough one.
It is. But it's where all the best learning happens.
You know what? This whole conversation has really been eye-opening.
I agree. It's been great.
It's made me realize that developing real intelligence, it's not about just stuffing your brain with as much information as you can.
No, not at all.
It's about so much more than that. It's about developing a new way of thinking, a new way of approaching the world.
That's curious and critical, but also kind. Remember that part.
Oh, so important.
Yeah.
And that's a journey we're all on together.
We are. We're all figuring it out as we go.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with this thought. Real intelligence, it's about more than just, like, avoiding the bad stuff.
The misinformation and all that.
Yeah. It's about actively seeking out the good stuff.
What do you mean?
It's about finding information that inspires you, that challenges you, information that helps you grow as a person.
Yes. And remembering that knowledge is powerful.
It is, but it's only powerful when it's used wisely and ethically.
That's the key. Using that power to create a better world for everyone.
Absolutely. And that's what we're all about, right?
It is.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it's giving you some new tools and insights to navigate this crazy world of information.
Yes, and remember, stay curious, stay engaged, keep asking those tough questions.
And we'll be back next time with another deep dive into something new and fascinating. Until then, stay informed and stay curious.